You've heard the saying from the sublime to the ridiculous. Well, Laura was sublime. And that was ridiculous. Right. Hey, listen, before we get into it, that theme about next generation, about getting new people into the sector, about interesting younger people, maybe down into students, school kids, all that kind of stuff, that's going to be all our theme for Home Game next year. We'll cover lots of things, I'm sure, but that's the central theme of the whole day for next year, and we're going to be working through Scottish Financial Enterprise. We're going to be working with some universities and other things to get some interesting younger people along, lovely as you all are, to Glasgow Science Centre and so on next year. So if that's a theme that interests you, and I hope it is, then you'll want to be part of that. Another massive theme is consolidation, and alongside that, it's not so much the act of consolidation, but what we're really interested in and what I really wanted to pull at today is, does size matter? Are big firms better or not as good as smaller firms when it comes to financial planning and financial advice? There's a popularly held belief that the natural unit of a financial planning business is small, right? 5 or under. I think it was Max from WealthSpace in the little mini Wealth Tech session we did at 11 o'clock this morning, quote an FCA stat that something like 90% of advice businesses have under 5 people in them. And I don't need to tell you, this industry is full of very large businesses who found it hard to make a go of running large-scale financial planning or financial advisory outfits. But is that changing? Because we have a new crop of large businesses coming through. We have some established ones as well, and there was G earlier from SJP. But we've got all sorts of new models happening. So what we thought we'd do is I'm going to talk to a couple of folk who are either consolidating or have been consolidated, which sounds like a painful experience, but I think we all know what I mean, right? And frankly, are now in this new breed of much, much larger firm, and we want to try and get inside them a little bit. After the break, I'll go away again, and Natalie will come and speak to smaller firms. Now, we're not necessarily asking these guys to go at each other and say, our way is better than your way, but what we do want to do is try and dive in a little bit to the dynamics that sit inside these businesses, the deal-making that we see, and whether this sector naturally resists getting big. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You've all been very quiet, I've noted this, and I would love you, because I know this is something that lots and lots of people are interested in. If you're in the room, I would love you to stick your hand up, and we'll get a mic to you as we go through. For those of you at home, you've been much better. Well done. So well done on all the questioning and all that kind of stuff. The people who are on the left-hand side of the country, which is over there, the right-hand side of the country is over there. This is a stereoscopic presentation. I'll shut up now. Could you welcome, please, therefore, Ed Dymott, who's the Chief Exec of Benchmark Capital, and Gordon Wilson, who's the MD of Carbon Financial Partners. And I will do my boy band impression on the stool in the middle. Boy bands may not have got any better, but they sure got fatter. Right, Gordon, let's start with you. You've been through the consolidation journey twice. Once, I think, back to 2000, that kind of thing, or at least the acquisition journey, I should say. So you've been through a process twice. And for anybody that don't know, Carbon was acquired by Progeny a year ago. Is it as much as a year ago now?
Nearly. No.
Very nearly. Time flies. So can you compare and contrast for us the process that you went through 20-something years ago versus what you've just been through? Is it different now when we look at firms changing ownership?
So the little pot of history, in 2000, I suppose, we were a business of 2 advisors, and we bought a few businesses. So I suppose we didn't see it as consolidating, but we did buy some firms through the 2000s, and we ran out of money, really, because we wanted to buy more firms, but at the time, nobody was interested in investing in financial advice firms, really. Private equity wasn't a thing in the sector. So Skipton came along and offered some funding, and they bought the majority stake. So Skipton was the business that bought our business at the time. That was our first experience of being consolidated, I suppose, because we wanted to build a big wealth manager in the UK, and Skipton allowed us to keep our brand and do that kind of thing. It was in 2008. The timing was bad, and it didn't work out particularly well. But we did learn an awful lot through the process. So, and the business that came out of it, because after a few years, when it was clear it wasn't working, largely because of timing, I started Carbon Financial Partners, and we kicked the thing off again. But what we did was we took a lot of the governance systems, processes, risk management, quite a lot of the things from Skipton into Carbon. So when we started Carbon, it was like had the good corporate stuff, but we could still run it and grow it in an entrepreneurial kind of way. So the second time around, I was just much clearer about what we were looking for, and we also went through a process, which I think is important. So the second time around, you don't get a fright. I mean, when we sold the first business in 2008, we thought we were quite good, but with hindsight, I mean, we were really, sloppy over a few things. But the Carbon business was really tight. So when it came to Progeny, for example, doing due diligence on Carbon, that went really smoothly because we had all the management information at our fingertips. We're in control of the business, and we knew what was coming. I suppose we also knew what to ask for as part of the negotiation process and what the red lines were, whereas we got shocked when we went into Skipton in terms of the amount of control that, we didn't realise they put people on our board. I mean, for goodness sake, you think, well, your business has been bought, of course they're going to do that. Shireen was telling me, who was our ops director, she spent 3 days a week in audit, because we were audited so often for different things. That's how much time she spent. So it's all that kind of stuff. So when you go into it a second time, it's just about, I met 14 companies before we did the deal, 4 management teams, so the process on our side was rigorous as well. So there were no surprises. There have been no surprises, and it's gone well.
Okay, can you give us an example of the sort of red lines that you're talking about? Because I think it's fascinating to hear it from your side of the table, and Ed, obviously, we'll hear it from your side in a moment.
Well, you would talk to some of the businesses. Well, the first thing, if I take Progeny, they led on culture, values, great client outcomes, doing the right thing. So their values chimed with ours. You'll speak to other companies, perhaps, and the focus is on assets, and quite quickly, you realise that that'll be a different kind of a beast when you get inside it. So that would be a big thing, just how prominent culture and values was, because that was the thing that was most important. How can we make sure our clients are looked after? How can we make sure our people are looked after? What's the opportunity for the team? We've got a young team, we've grown our own. That was one of the reasons we sold. If you've grown 15 of your own financial planners, how do you grow quickly enough to give everybody the kind of career opportunities that they want in a business that's growing organically? It's just really, really hard. So that kind of thing, perhaps.
Great stuff. And Ed, how does this... Well, actually, before we do anything, maybe not everybody's familiar with Benchmark's model and what you guys get up to. So let's start there.
Maybe I'll give a brief overview then in terms of what Benchmark is. So I guess we're a business in a box for financial planners. So yeah, we are a big brand as well. So we're a top 10 advice firm in the UK. But we run employed, self-employed, and independent. So actually, we have both sides of the equations here. So I definitely can talk as a big brand and what we do there as a national financial planning business. We also support a lot of small independent firms as well. But I guess our proposition is a business and box for financial planners. I guess when we come to consolidating, and we don't like the phrase consolidation.
Oh, we'll stop using it.
But we do buy a business every 6 weeks. But majority of businesses we buy, we already know. So actually, the thing that's quite different about our business model is most of the firms have been with us for some time. So normally between 5 and 10 years, they've got to know the business, they're all integrated into what we do, and ultimately as part of their exit planning, we offer them that smooth path into our employed model.
And for those that don't know, what propositions of yours would they use? Obviously, I mean, back in the day and the
I guess our business in the box is we offer them front office technology, back office technology, compliance services, We have our own in-house investment platform. We also connect to 102 different providers across the market. You can do mortgages, protection. So pretty much anything a financial planner wants to do, they can do it through our business in the box solution.
Okay, great. Well, let's ask this then. What makes you not want to be thought of as a consolidator? What's happened to that term that makes it a little toxic for you?
So primarily we're a financial planning business. So I guess the consolidators, they tend to be categorised as those businesses that have been backed by private equity. And I guess with private equity, there's this end state in mind. I think that goes with a reputation that feels like they're all working towards an end point in 3, 4, 5 years' time, which something else is going to happen. Ultimately, our business is a financial planning business. We are owned by Schroders. We are a long-term hold by Schroders. And therefore, that is the core of what our business is. So I guess when we look at our client relationships, we are like any other financial planning business, which is how do we maintain and grow those relationships over the long term. And I guess that's the primary driver for our business model. And I guess that therefore drives everything we do. So I guess when we think about our client propositions, the support, it's all that long-term sort of client delivery in mind.
So I guess at the risk of being a little pokey here, I've heard that sung up by a lot of businesses, right? We're financial, but we've got best interest of the client at heart. We have learned that we should speak about client outcomes and how great they are with us as opposed to with small independent firms, I suppose. I don't know if you compare yourselves in terms of the quality of outcome there. We might come back to that. I guess those that look with a more cynical eye, which is definitely not me, right? I mean, I've never been cynical. That's skin deep, right? Because these things aren't charities. You're buying businesses. The only way you make money is through either advice fees or, frankly, through vertical integration. And eventually someone's got to pay for all of this. So do you think the sector, you don't have to speak particularly for Benchmark here, because I imagine you'll be constrained in what you can say, but from a sectoral level, are we doing a good enough job in ensuring that the larger end and the more acquisitive end is remaining focused on customer outcomes? Because it feels hard to draw that line sometimes.
I think there's different ways around doing it, and I will talk about the Benchmark perspective here, because I guess there's a way we do things which I think really has that in mind as well. So I guess there's two different dimensions here, which is the big brands ultimately carry the reputation of our profession. So when we look at what it means for financial planning, if the big brands do a great job, it's a good thing for the profession. And ultimately, if the big brands do not do a good job, then it's the thing that's going to impact the reputation broadly. I think on the flip side, though, and actually it was interesting that the FSCS put their stats out the other day. I think the FSCS had £450 million of claims paid out from 460 firms, half of which was from advice firms. That's a small business issue. So when it comes to business failures, where there is actually consumer harm due to business failures, actually there's quite a lot still in the small firm sector as well. Yeah. But absolutely, I think when I look at the big brands, clearly when we look at our own business model, so again, I'll give a bit more color in terms of how we operate. We do have a vertically integrated proposition. Only about 1 in 3 of our advisors are actually using our in-house solution, so the majority goes elsewhere. We also really think about conflicts of interest when we look at our own in-house propositions. So you can get everything from us. So you can get the compliance services, the platform, investment solutions, but each of our component parts has to be independently competitive. So one of the things we're not sure if all the big brands have got right is that cross-subsidy that exists, and therefore the conflict of interest in that business model. Why some business models are charging twice as much for a platform than the going rate, I think that has a reputational drag on the industry. That's not in our business model. We're very focused on making sure at each individual component parts that is as competitive as it can be. And I think that's one of the things I think some of the big firms really should take a look at. So Gordon, you obviously made your peace with the progeny proposition, which is great, and you can speak to that if you would like. But having looked at, you say, 14 potential acquirers, did you see We weren't one of those, were we?
No.
You didn't look at Benchmark? No. I mean, we could phone Rob and see if he can get out of what we're doing and get him out. You must have seen quite a spread then in terms of practice, in terms of that client focus that you were talking about. And I guess I've spent a lot of time and built quite a lot of the Lancat on analysing platforms and MPSs and all that good kind of stuff. And it is true, I think it's empirically true, that in the consolidator model, there's a lot of overpriced crap out there, right? There really is. You must have caught some of that along the way. So can you help us understand the kind of breadth of what you saw, not just in terms of client focus, but in terms of the quality of the proposition? Because I presume, being part of Progeny now, you know, it has its own vertically integrated propositions to use as well, investment propositions and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I suppose we chose Progeny is we're an evidence-based financial planning firm, and we needed a solution that allowed us to deliver that. So Progeny do have Progeny Asset Management, and it's just as Ed described. I mean, I'd be repeating Ed if I was to go down that track. All I would say is that we haven't been asked to use the proposition. But the whole thing is that if it stacks up, then you use it. And if it doesn't, you don't. And I think if it's run like that, then I think it's fine. You go through your due diligence in the same way with the Progeny solution as you do with anybody else's solution.
Cool. Just making sure that I'm catching chat here, and I've got my questions here, and then the chat's here. Thank you, Nat. Question from Paul. I don't know if Paul's here or at home. Hi, Paul, or Paul, depending whether he's left or right side of the country. That gag's going to run and run. I'm going to read it out verbatim, actually, because I think it's an excellent question. Gordon's spoken often, and this is true, about how important people are to Carbon. I've seen you speak about the culture that you've tried to grow and that kind of stuff as well. Given that, did you consider an employee ownership trust? Or I'll add MBO to that, and if so, why didn't you go down that route? Because if you've got these young ones coming through, there is the potential, if everybody's 55, nobody necessarily wants to take that on. But was that something you looked at?
We did, yeah. We were pretty thorough in these things, and we looked at every solution. And I guess the big thing, you were focused on, what solution is going to make sure, again, the clients, the people, and the shareholders are best looked after. You've got to consider all your stakeholders. So, when you're thinking of an MBO, for example, you need people clearly that want to take it on. But what does the board look like? What's it going to cost? And this came around as well at not the cheapest time for money. So, you think, in the round, what's the best long-term sustainable solution for your clients and the team? And back to opportunity as well, being part of a bigger business like Progeny, and I do think Progeny is probably the or maybe with Ed on the stage, one of the most progressive financial advice businesses
well done.
in the UK, which would give the greatest opportunity to the team really to progress and develop and be supported. So we did. It's a long answer if I was to break down each of why we didn't go down that route, but it wasn't going to be quite right for us. I suppose we also had 20 shareholders. Most of the team, we offered all the team equity in the business. So, a lot of the team had equity in the business. You have to think of everybody when you make these decisions.
Okay. One of the questions that I've got noted down here, it kind of speaks to something you were mentioning, Ed, a little bit earlier, which is about the ability of larger businesses to do things right. And actually, the way I've got the question written down is the converse of that, which is to say, as you move through an asset gathering model, pressure comes in from funders, then sometimes the pressure to go quickly leads to blind spots, I guess, in the rearview mirror. How do you resist that? I suspect you're going to say that you do resist that and you keep high standards. But when you've got, how many businesses has Benchmark bought now?
How many have we bought? 50.
Yeah.
So just over 50.
Just over 50.
Yeah.
Right, that's a lot. And I mean, they're not easy, this bunch. Right? It's hard to buy IFAs and get them to do what you want. How do you make that happen with people running all over the place?
Yeah, so I go back to our business model. So we're different from the consolidators because we know most of our businesses. So I think in the last 4 years, we have averaged every 6 weeks we bought a business. We've only bought 3 we didn't know. And so getting to know those businesses in advance, culturally alignment, so the journey you've been through, we'll do with every one of our businesses. they've been integrated into our ecosystem before we've acquired them. And so therefore we know each other and we know a lot about each other. They use our technology. We tend to have done their compliance for them. There will be good connectivity with the other advisors in our group. And so that naturally means the culture is already there. And so that means we are a little bit different to how others operate. Whereas others, when they acquire businesses, and Gordon, you'll be going through this at the moment, integration's hard. Whatever state you're in, if you're not within that group already, it's a challenging process to go through overall. So that, again, I think in our model we try and de-risk that. I guess then, and then I think going back to the second part of your question, when I look at then the standards, there's such a focus on the bigger brands, whether that's from the regulator, whether it's from the media, whether it's from the high-quality Scottish consultancy businesses in terms of what we do, what we don't do.
There's only one, Ed.
There is only one, yes. But I guess that reinforces the need for having high standards. And so that absolutely drives us. So yeah, we're a commercial organisation in terms of we want to grow and develop, but actually those high standards are important to everything we do.
Okay. Anybody in the room? Anybody got anything they'd like to put to this pair of legends here? No, everyone's very bored of you already, but that's a problem for you because we've got another 10 minutes with these guys. So I've got another question because I'm well prepared. Look. Oh, there was a question.
Yeah.
Hello.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's Ennis Miller from Origo here.
Hey, Ennis, how you doing?
Fine, thank you. Yeah, I was just kind of curious. There was a point that Ed made, and it was around the endpoint. So, we've got all of this private equity interest and ownership now among advice firms, which is fantastic because I think it is helping to drive standards higher in some ways. I'm kind of curious to know what the exit strategies might be looking like for these firms sort of going forward. I mean, we have seen in the past a lot of providers buying into advice models. Will that continue? Will asset managers buy them? What do we think the likely exit strategies are going to be? Flotation might be one, but what else is looking quite likely at this point in time?
No, so I'm not necessarily one who go deep in other people's business models, but I guess the nature of private equity, and there's 35 private equity-backed consolidated businesses now in this space. I guess the cycle with private equity is at some point these businesses look for an exit. I guess at the moment there's going to be too much supply. So I guess lots of people talk about is there the consolidator of the consolidators. I guess who knows. I think it's a very interesting stat and sort of trend that we look at. So one of the things that we target specifically is what we call the breakaway advisor segment. So that is experienced financial planners setting up their own business. The number one lead generation for us at the moment is from the consolidators. So that's actually people who've been consolidated and they're either going again or actually more often than not, it's the teams underneath the principals who've sold who are going, actually, Gordon's just done it. Actually, do you know what? I think I could do that as well. So actually last year we set up 20 brand new businesses with established financial planners, largely coming out of the consolidators, all wanting to do their own thing. And I think that breakaway advisor trend is something that's very, very interesting to watch. And actually that's the full cycle. So it doesn't quite answer your question, but I think actually it starts to show a potential challenge in that consolidator model.
Gordon?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in terms of the advisors leaving, because we had quite a lot of ownership in the business, one of my criteria was we had to have ownership in any business that acquired us, and at the same class of shares as the CEO. So, and that's what we've got, but not everybody would offer that. So, everybody's fully engaged and fully involved as owners in the business, which I think is critical. Where it goes, ultimately, I suppose you just get different tiers of private equity, don't you? And you get a reef as the business grows. Then the next tier will come along and probably be interested in investing in it, and that's how it rolls. But ultimately, where it goes, that's a difficult question, I suppose.
Great stuff, thank you. Gary down here.
Hi, Gary Hale, HK Wealth. A lot of the discussion's been around the businesses and the business owners and the staff, and there's obviously been a lot of discussion, maybe lesser discussion around the actual clients themselves and the clients going through that experience. I guess the question probably applies to both, but it'd be interesting, maybe initially from Gordon, how your clients reacted and their experiences of going through such a a transition, if that's okay.
Yeah, and there's no transition for the clients. I mean, there's a different owner, but there's no transition. I mean, typically, there are 3 questions that clients want to be answered. Are my fees going up? Will my planner change? And is anybody losing their job? And provided you can reassure them on all those 3 points, they're completely fine. There is no issue with clients. We actually did an independent client survey pre and post, and the firm who did it for us, and it was over 500 clients each time, so it was a reasonable sample. And we asked the question about progeny, and the scores were, the overall score, the quant score, was 9.1 out of 10 for how they felt about carbon and what was happening at progeny. And so that's a communication exercise, I think. That's making sure that your team are reassured, the clients are reassured, and that you're doing the right thing by clients. As long as that's clear, then there's not an issue. If you start messing about and increasing prices and changing propositions, and I think that's going to be a challenge, but that's not what this is about.
Yeah, there's maybe 2 things I would add to it, which is, I guess we always look at it and say, you've got to look at, I guess, the principal shareholders, you've got to look at the staff, and you've got to look at the clients. If any one of those 3 things goes out of kilter, something is invariably going to go wrong with the deal down the line. And so we definitely look at those 3 lenses from anything we do. I guess the other thing, I guess because of the way we acquire businesses, generally it's a very smooth path for our clients. So we acquired a business last year called Champagne Financial Services. I hasten to add that was the individual surname, not some sort of lifestyle brand. But I know. But they've been with us for 13 years. They use our technology. We ran their compliance for them. And actually for the clients and for the staff, it felt like a very natural part of the journey. And actually the client feedback that we had and the staff feedback was, well, we kind of always thought at some point we'd end up with Benchmark. And actually in those cases, the prices actually went down. So the client ends up paying less. And actually, given, and I know we're going to get into the small businesses later, given the breadth of what we can offer, we can give them more support. So more coverage of offices, more support staff, better access over a longer period of time, more specialist resources when they need it. So I guess that's the depth of the stuff that we can bring to that relationship, which maybe a smaller business might not always have.
So bearing in mind that everything you say is going to get countered by the smaller firms after coffee, Gordon, having deliberately chosen to join quite a large outfit in Progeny now and growing very quickly, what benefits would you say the large advisor businesses might have over what you knew so well in the smaller end of things, bearing in mind that there's quite a lot of small firms in here and you've got to walk past them all to get out?
Yeah, but there's a lot of great small firms, and when we were smaller, we thought we were a great small firm. So I don't think it's about being maybe size. It doesn't matter. It's about values and people, and it's about how you run your business, whether it's a 3-person business or a 300-person business. But yeah, certainly at Progeny, one of the big things is just the opportunity, and it's specialism as well. It allows you to do your job. If you are, 89% of firms are 5 planners or smaller, you might be sharing at that size responsibility for compliance or HR or fund research or all this other stuff that makes it really hard to just do your job. When you become part of a bigger firm, you're freed from a lot of the stuff that you maybe don't like doing, because within a bigger firm, there's always somebody that likes doing that stuff that maybe planners don't like doing. So it's that kind of thing. And I suppose one interesting aspect with Progeny is the international side. And the movement of people now is quite a big thing. So there's continuity between people living abroad coming back to the UK and vice versa, which is something we couldn't offer before. And as you know, Progeny, I've got law and tax, which is quite interesting as a differentiator. So there's a whole range of services that you can offer that's broader than perhaps if you were a smaller firm. It doesn't make it better because you can offer more stuff, but it can.
So I'm going to hedge my bets a little bit because I guess because we support a lot of small businesses, so of our 200 firms we support, the average number of advisors there are 3 per firm. And so we love small businesses, and actually to Gordon's point, one of the things that we do is really help those small businesses thrive by actually giving them scale and access to capabilities. So whether it comes to technology or compliance or financing, one of the things that we do is actually say, look, you can access the scale at the centre of what Benchmark does. I guess at the bigger level, I guess there's a number of things. It's consistency of outcome. So if you go into any one of our offices across the country, there's a consistency in terms of brand, client process, etc. That's important to us. The capability, so no matter what kind of advice you want, we're going to have the capability within the group to support that. And I guess then coverage as well, which is an important thing. So, naturally, actually, we've got a sizable presence now in the Southwest, not because necessarily we went and said we want to be in the Southwest, because our clients move. And therefore, actually, being able to go where your clients go is also an important part of what we can do as well.
What you're saying is a second home crisis in the Southwest
Exactly,
caused by
yes.
Benchmark.
Absolutely.
I thought that was the case. Listen,
Just one thing to add, technology is something I meant to mention after the session
Yeah,
earlier,
please.
because I think that's huge. I mean, at Carbon, we had a technology strategy. We wanted to be at the forefront, but I had to take my head of paraplanning to tell him to look at technology. Now, how much time can Ben spend looking at AI and all the different technologies that are out there? Whereas at Progeny, we've got a CTO. And Neil, the CEO, is desperate for us to be at the forefront of that. So you've got dedicated resource, and I think it will be harder for smaller firms to keep up with that kind of stuff. It's a bit like Joseph said. There might be a lag in terms of being able to adopt the latest technologies.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
I maybe put a stat on there actually for you. So of the 650 people I've got 160 people in technology. So whether that's thinking about future technology, AI, data, security, that's a substantial part of what we can do. And yet smaller businesses actually will struggle to find that type of capability, really.
Okay, great. So listen, we're out of time for that session. That was the case for large companies. Defending there, and you were all extremely respectful. I thought that was very good. Well done. We're going to have a break in a moment, and then it will be the case for smaller companies. We're not going to have a dance-off or a vote or pugil sticks or anything like that, though I wanted to do all those things, and I wasn't allowed, let the record show. But for now, please thank Gordon and Ed.